So we was talking about technology itself is important, right? But technology, just like we discussed, it's something on paper. If there is no good business model, then it's just still there, it's there, nobody to commercialize it. So I remember you have told us many times, it's probably more important to have good business model.
Yeah.
But we couldn't deny the importance of technology because we are studying the emerging technology and we know it's going to be very potential into our future world. But when it comes to business model, you mentioned about Taiwan, right? Taiwan has very good technology and has many development, and we have earnest engineer, great scientist who receive very good education abroad and come back to Taiwan to join this research task force. However, we didn't see like a very successful model like in Silicon Valley who has made great impact to the world. It's all because we don't have very decent or very successful business model. So in this regard, Paul, could you share us some other example?
Yeah.
Your 80-20 rule.
Yeah, okay. Well, the reason why I've been thinking about this 80-20 rule, okay, for a successful business model, maybe 20% should be attributed to the new technology.
That's right.
But the 80% must be attributed to the new business model. They so go hand in hand. And it happened to be one of the MIT professor that visited me about roughly a year ago. We hit off because he also agreed.
Yes.
Let me explain a little further, just for the benefit of the audience.
Yes.
Now take Uber.
Uber.
Yeah,
Okay.
for example, Uber, nevertheless, is a successful business model.
That's true.
Right?
Yes.
Once the business model was created, it expanded to all over the world. Okay? Only small problem is how to comply with the local laws and regulations, or on the other hand, how the local laws and regulations adjust to the new model of Uber. And so then I searched a little further. I think it's very important to understand Uber as a business model, why it is successful, okay, is the understanding of the marketplace. You look at, let's say, a middle-class professional, he got a job, let's say it's a 9 to 5, right? At a decent salary, doesn't make him, rich overnight, but he has a decent income, so he's classified as a middle class.
That's true.
So a middle class with his salary, he will either rent a place to live, or he would using down payment to buy a house.
Okay.
But at the same time, living in the United States, you cannot get around without an automobile.
That's true.
So he also in down payment to buy an automobile.
Right.
So 9 to 5. After 5, went home and having dinner, and he has a whole maybe 5-6 hours ahead of him. Usual lifestyle is watching TV, have a beer in hand, and watching sports maybe.
Right.
So I think the inventor of the business model of Uber, he understands that. He come up with innovative idea.
Okay.
So why can't this person utilizing his couple of hours time to make some money? So internet technology comes in. Okay. So then he will be able to
create this model
a window to make some additional money. So the car will not be idling there in the parking lot, so that he can make some money, help to pay down payment.
This is a very interesting story. So Paul, you are telling us the founder actually exercised a very good observation skill to understand people's behavior and see people's pain point, and then combine together with the internet technology and give this kind of new business model, which is extremely successful. I think not only Uber is become a model that has been copied by many other vendors, right? So, for example, I stay in China most of the time and see Didi, which is also very influential, who actually copied Uber's model.
Exactly.
Right.
So, Airbnb the same way. Airbnb is doing very well. They are about to go public, right?
Right.
And so, how to understand the market? How to understand the psychology of the people?
Right.
How to understand the changing lifestyle?
Right.
Okay. This is not just based on technology. It's based on technology in combination with an innovative idea in creating a new business model.
That's right. Okay.
So I think that's what I want to say.
It's very interesting.
How do we introduce that spirit into the younger generation all over the world, including the younger generation in Taiwan? So Apple Foundation founded 30 years ago. We're very successful in training young people to be innovative. And actually, we have an ongoing program called Startup Global Program. We attract the startup companies from all over the world attend the program.
Right.
Now the question is, what happened then? I personally like to see there's a more new business model being created along with the introduction of new technology. So make those young people doing startup become financially more successful in the global market.
That's a very wonderful and respectful aspiration. We'll talk to that point later. Actually, I would like to seek your advice to our younger generation. But you mentioned something very interesting that interests me. You're talking about Taiwan innovation and the Taiwan business model, right? If we put Taiwan as we look at from the world, right? Taiwan actually is a very important stakeholder in China's innovation ecosystem, right? Let's take the semiconductor industry for example, right? Taiwan's semiconductor industry now become a crucial, a very key to the future economic growth in China, right? There are many hundreds of thousands of high-tech companies. They taking technology transfer to mainland China and manufacture there. They hire a lot of local employees, making contribution to the domestic employment, and at the same time create a lot of triangle trading surplus and to the GDP of mainland China. But on the other hand, you see a lot of Taiwanese companies, they are doing great in exportation. But if we look at the statistic data last month, about 45% of export volume actually went into mainland China, which is a huge part of Taiwan's GDP and trading volume. So we can see Taiwan's economics also rely on this huge economic body. Right. So that's probably the best illustration of so-called co-competition, right? But trade war is changing, right? Changing that subtle balance. But what I see here is Taiwanese enterprise, Taiwanese business, seems to me is standing at a very unique point, a very unique, we call it leveraging point, where they probably could exercise their force or their power to influence the establishment of the new economic norm you just mentioned. So my question to you, Paul, from your point of view, how will you see where is this leveraging point is located, or how Taiwanese enterprise, Taiwanese business, to maximize, to utilize their standing points to turn the challenge of trade war into opportunity? What is your view?
Okay. If we divide the world into two parts, okay? or even 3-part. But with this division of the world, there's a less political consideration,
Okay.
more economic consideration.
Right.
I think the world will be quite different. Yeah. Now, that's why I don't want to take this occasion to criticize a certain political system.
Okay.
But I would be very candid in saying we should search for the best political system.
Okay.
Yeah, for everybody in the world.
Right.
So here, look at human history, starting from the Industrial Revolution in England. Okay.
Yes.
Roughly 250 years ago, when steam engine was invented.
Right.
We look at Industrial Revolution, started with the steam engine, had changed the world and created the so-called Western style capitalism. Recently we call that shareholder capitalism.
Shareholder capitalism.
Yeah.
Okay.
In other words, a shareholder form a company and try to make money, then it undermine the rights and interests of the then-shareholder.
Right.
So that's how Industrial Revolution started. They began to hire child laborers and all that, or Dickens novels and all that. They reflect that part of the world during that time. And then we have people like Karl Marx come up with socialism, trying to equalize
That's right.
the disadvantage introduced by shareholder capitalism. Yeah. And then, of course, it became the extreme communism.
Yes.
Actually, dictatorship by proletarian. So create the confrontation between the rich and the poor. Okay?
Yes.
So under the circumstances, create a lot of conflict. Create a civil war here and there. The Spanish Civil War, Chinese Civil War, the Russian Revolution,
Right.
and then later on, the war in Vietnam, the war in before that, the war in Korea.
Right.
The conflicting party all use different political ideology. Okay, one is capitalism, another is socialism.
Okay, so these two poles, two extreme.
Then you have to realize. Even in a capitalist country, they began to recognize some of the shortcomings. So that's why 1900s, Sherman Act was introduced in the United States.
Right.
Okay? So now we are anti-monopoly, we are anti-that. So that become very good. Okay. But you look at the conflict continue even nowadays.
Right.
So I think looking at Taiwan's last 50, 60 years development, and in many ways I'm involved, and perhaps you're involved too. Certainly many of my law students, fellow lawyers are involved in come up with legislation to protect labor, because they are not shareholder but they are stakeholder.
Okay.
Protect the consumer, they are not shareholder but they are stakeholder.
So that's stakeholder capitalism. Okay.
And protect the average people to prevent them from being injured by the pollution and all that. Concern environmental legislation.
Right.
And in the future, we can think of many more.
Right.
Like small medium-sized industry in the supply chain should be duly respected too.
That's very interesting historical perspective. But what kind of role Taiwanese enterprise or business could take in this process?
Of course, this is a big question. We should continue to encourage innovation. We should continue to build a system which is based on stakeholder capitalism, not just for shareholders to get rich. Benefit will be shared by all stakeholders.
That's right.
In terms of political transformation, social transformation, and economic transformation go hand in hand.
Right. Okay.
To transform the society to the satisfaction of the majority of the people.
It's very insightful, but I'm curious how you just mentioned we continue to build up the system. So that by saying that, you are suggesting we have good foundation.
Yes.
Can you shed some light on that?
But we have good foundation, but we fail to develop what is within our foundation into a noble ideology. Okay. So now we stress on democracy, Taiwan. But if everybody focuses on election and undermining social, political, economic development going hand in hand, become a game for the politicians. They're competing for votes.
So we should shift that focus to more long-term, to more visionary.
Yes, and put Taiwan in the high ground from the perspective of the global development. Well, that's why I like to focus on several things first. We cannot do all the things at the same time. Number one is to develop this ideology of stakeholder capitalism, matching Taiwan's past and present as well as future development. And then, in order to do that, the idea is to put Taiwan on the high ground. In terms of international environment, in terms of the global perspective. I think we've been successful so far in this experiment. We need to be more successful in the years to come.
So if I may summarize a little bit, we was talking about how Taiwanese enterprise or business to utilize their spatial leveraging point and try to have positive influence of the establish of the new norm, because we are facing the trade war. So the norm is changing by the trade war, by COVID-19, also by new technology. And what we can do is we probably should to raise our self-position a bit higher. We move from just like democratic election, the focus out of there into more visionary ideology discussion, and focus on all the stakeholders in our ecosystem. So maybe we can call it stakeholder capitalism, right? And at the same time, try to raise our position with a higher ground, so we can play a really important role in this changing world. And that's amazing. Thank you, Paul, for elaborating this concept. I think that's pretty much towards the end of our conversation, but because you have so much tremendous experience, and you have made great contribution to the economic growth of this land in almost half of the century. There are too many for us to discuss everything here in this short interview, in this short conversation. So I'd like to just learn quickly from you, if you may, what do you would say, one or two things that most memorable, your most memorable moments, more notable deal or transaction or story you have worked on. So can you share one or two with us?
Well, there were many stories, but I would say those stories would be attached to different stages of Taiwan's economic development and social development as well. I think the first is when Taiwan's first stage of economic development is focused on manufacturing industry. So at that time, the big shift is from manufacturing industry to service industry. So the memorable time was to introduce the concept of service industry to Taiwan. The first notable example is introducing McDonald's hamburger to Taiwan.
That's interesting.
At the first stage, the government officials don't see any value by having McDonald's hamburger. In their mind, Taiwan still needs manufacturing industry. So in our research effort, we identify by virtue of McDonald's hamburger coming to Taiwan, they can stimulate close to 70 different manufacturing industry.
Okay.
Because they introduced the disposable utensil,
I see you.
paper
Okay.
cup and all that.
Yes.
So that boosted Taiwan's paper cup industry.
Okay, so
Many more.
You found a good way to elaborate or to introduce from the perspective of technology and the manufacturer, so as to convince the government official at the time.
Right, and not saying how great McDonald's hamburger is,
Right. Okay.
but rather arguing, the management system.
Right.
This is exactly the word I use to convince at that time the Minister of Economic Affairs.
That's a very appealing story. But what was the critical turning point in that project? Could you still remember?
Well, the turning point of that project is de-emphasize McDonald's hamburger is a restaurant,
Okay.
but overemphasize McDonald's hamburger is a management system.
That's a very smart move. What made you think of that move?
Well, because the other approach become a dead-end street. Then you have to think, you have to be innovative,
Right.
and you have to understand the industry.
Right.
Right. So later on, my argument is not just for McDonald's hamburger. I said, if we stick to manufacturing industry, we have to lower the manufacturing costs in order to show profit.
Right.
But if we using the service industry, then we can add value.
So that's like the flash of genius, right?
Yeah.
When you try several, we call blind alleys.
Yeah.
Then the flash of genius make you think, okay, we change the angle of this argument.
Yeah.
That brought me back to the very beginning. We was talking about how a business model is supposed to be found, right? You need to observe the Uber example, right? You need to observe the behavior. You need to understand the psychology of those government officials, their mental set. And you need to understand the pain point, which means at that critical moment, Taiwan need a lot of manufacture value, so you change the angle of the argument successfully.
Parallel analogy I used recently at the MIT annual meeting for the MIT alum.
Yes.
Okay.
Just few weeks ago.
They only gave me a few minutes to make a statement. The reason why I founded the Apple Foundation and partnered with MIT a little more than 30 years ago was there is a must in my mind. Okay? Must is Taiwan must face changes, bringing new technology, not just doing the traditional way of manufacturing, bringing new technology. So there's a must. So that's in my mind.
I see.
And the other thing is by accident. By accident, somebody introduced Lester Thoreau, the dean of the Sloan School, to me. So on one hand, it's a must. Taiwan must changes. Must face some changes. The other is by accident. That Lester Thoreau came to visit Taiwan. So I think we're still facing the same situation.
That's right.
There's a must. Taiwan must change.
I must change.
The world has to change. Taiwan has to change. And so we all have to facing the changes for the better.
So one incident or accident that changed the path of Taiwan in the past 30 years. So that actually brings me to the last question. What kind of advice would you will give to younger generation?
First is the 20-80% rule. You learn technology, but at the same time you have to think about business model. Your innovation should be spread from technology to new business model. So that's what Taiwan is lacking. So teaching at the university or even high school, how to emphasize the importance of new business model. But then you have to study the market. The younger generation taste. You have to study many things. to ensure your new business model will be successful, or will be money making.
Mm-hmm.
So that one thing. Using practical example,
Right.
I think Taiwan's agricultural technology is very advanced.
Mm-hmm.
We should stop thinking about exporting agricultural produce.
Not the produce, not the physical products.
We
But
should
what else?
emphasize export of agricultural technology.
Technology.
So
Okay.
that, of course, inevitably we have to study a whole range of issues.
Mm-hmm.
One issue is in your expertise,
Okay.
intellectual property protection,
And the
how to
monetization,
monetize it.
That's right.
So I think that's one area Taiwan should devote.
You can make
herself
great money to the young generation.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that's global.
Okay.
The whole world, in many parts of the world, people are still starving.
Okay.
Okay, and people need to eat. People
Mhm.
need have food security,
Mhm.
and et cetera, et cetera. The other is healthcare. Okay,
Agricultural technology and healthcare.
healthcare,
Okay.
healthcare, especially healthcare services.
Okay.
Yeah, and including the preventive medicine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of service, not just focusing on new medicine.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, the medical device is
Mhm.
another advantage of the Taiwan's industry, because most IT,
IT.
industry, they
Right.
want to shift to a high value added product.
So that's very good decision, potential,
Yeah.
and for good fortune
Yeah.
for the young generation.
Yeah. Another thing, if the government has research funding, they should be focusing on participating in the global effort in researching into the new energy policy
Energy policy.
or energy technology.
Also, okay. So it's industry.
And also they should take part in the research with the leading
Mhm.
research-oriented university around the world and study climate change issue.
That's very interesting. So let me summarize. Paul mentioned 3 directions, which is good direction for young generation if they want to make great impacts, if they want to succeed. So number 1 is the energy technology, attention to climate change. Number 2 is healthcare equipment combined with Taiwan's IT power. And the last one, but not least one, right? The agriculture, but not agriculture proceeds is not real goods, but the agriculture technology. We use IP strategy, we can spread to rest of the world.
And new business model too.
80%. Great. So with those so much input from Paul, I'm going to close this conversation soon. But it's a really great opportunity for us to have this interview, and partly because Paul's is very good intention for you to pass those experiences to us, and partly because I have this book, Innovation Crunching Tiger.
Yeah.
So that's make me have this opportunity to
Yeah.
speak with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will treasure this book and read it carefully.
Thank you very much. Thank you, your friends' attention and your participation in this channel. And we look forward to more conversation with Professor Paul Shi on other interesting topics. Today is just the end of today's conversation. We'll have more, so stay tuned. Bye bye. 再见。
拜拜。